Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. Tonight, a major economic signal that affects every Nigerian home, market stall and business ledger. Nigeria's inflation rate has eased again for the 8th consecutive month. Fresh data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that headline inflation dropped to 14.45% in November 2025, down sharply from 16.05% in October. And that's a 1.6% point decline in just 1 month, and no doubt a remarkable turnaround from 34.6% recorded in November last year. But let's be clear, and this is very important, a slowing inflation rate doesn't mean prices are falling. What it means in essence is that prices are rising more slowly than before. The pressure is easing, but the cost of living challenge is not gone. Well, completely. Now, the relief is most visible, as we can see, in food. What has been the biggest driver of household pain? Food inflation dropped to 11.08% year on year from an eye-watering 39.93% a year ago. That's nearly 29 percentage points lower. Although month-on-month figures show some food items, tomatoes, eggs, pepper, onions, fish still recorded price increases as recent as November. So we're looking at core inflation this evening, and it strips out volatile items like food and energy, which also cooled to 18.04%, down from nearly 29% this time last year, pointing to broader easing across the economy. So the big question is, what really is driving this slowdown? Is it policy tightening by the central bank? Is it exchange rate stability? Is it base effects from last year's price shock? Or perhaps it's something more seasonal, what economists are now calling the lag effect of dirty December. We are looking into all of that on the show today. Are we finally on a path to single-digit inflation for the first time in 5 years? Some are quite optimistic, including my guest tonight, who believes the answer is yes. Joining me is Dr. Ayo Teriba, CEO of Economic Associates. He argues that if current trends hold, inflation could fall to around 12% by December and even slip into single digits by January next year, not just because of statistical rebasing, but because of real economic deceleration already underway. Dr. Teriba, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Headlines. Let's start from the basics that Nigerians care about. Inflation has now dropped for 8 straight months, and it stands at 14.45%. But many Nigerians still say food and transport feel expensive. In plain terms, what exactly is improving and what is not in people's daily lives?
Thank you very much, Nick Femi. It's my pleasure to be here. Good evening, viewers. And let me correct a wrong impression that you just parroted. You said inflation has dropped for the 8th straight month. That does not tell Nigeria's inflation story. This is the inflation in Nigeria started decelerating in December 2024. November 2024 was the 15-year peak of the inflation that started the monthly series that started in November 2009, that was now rebased, in 2024. So why do you cut off the fact that inflation decelerated in December and even more steeply in January and decelerated further in February? For the whole of this year, it has accelerated only 1 month in March. You then cut off that beautiful first story with which the year started. And then you say it's consecutive months. Stop saying that. Inflation has been a downward trend now for 11 months, with the exception of March.
I hear you, and I understand. I understand that sentiment, Dr. Teriba. There's also confusion around the data, because I know that you've criticized the NBS for leaving out the January 2025 month-on-month inflation figure. The argument is that
it's not a criticism. It's a
Yes.
suggestion. I called
Okay.
upon them. Don't say it's if it is.
Okay. The
Yes.
suggestion, Dr. Teriba,
Yes.
is that it was actually minus 5.2%, not plus 10%. Why does
That's
this
correct.
missing data matter so much? And how do you think it affects policy decisions that touch the ordinary Nigerians?
Okay, when this NBS announced the rebasing in January, when they announced it in January, as they announced the January inflation number to have fallen to 24.48% from 33% in December. So the biggest deceleration that we've got this year happened in January. They said the month on month was dash. Subsequently, they now saying the month on month was 10.7. How can the steepest deceleration in year-on-year inflation coincide with 10.7? That's wrong. See, MBS should stop saying 10.7 month on month. It's wrong. It cannot happen. In a month that the index actually dropped to 110 from 116 in December. So we need to clarify all of that. Maybe that may be too complex. The point is that from 34.6% in November last year, we now have inflation printing at 14.45% in November 2025. And it's headed for single digit by January. And some will say it's methodology change. No methodology change. Some will say it's because of rebasing. It's not because of rebasing. Rebasing does not affect the rate of inflation.
But
here in Nigeria or anywhere in the world, the rebasing,
yes,
go on.
Dr. Teriba, even after the easing, we understand that core inflation is still around 18%. What that means is
you have to understand that
yes,
what you take from headline inflation to get core inflation is food and energy.
Exactly the point I'm making.
And that food and energy, when inflation is on the way up, food and energy will outpace every other component of the basket. And when it's on the way down, it will outpace every other component of the basket. Food is now printing at less than 12%. When the headline inflation is at 14.5, and core is still like core will include your consumer durables, which prices will be the last to go up, and they will be the last to come down, like rents. You know, you can see what's happening to real estate prices. As inflation is decelerating, those prices are still going up. They will come down. In March of 2026, they will come down. Most of those houses will be auctioned. Just like many retail, outlets are shutting down now because they're never going to be able to sell at the price at which they stocked up.
I like your optimism, Dr. Teriba. Non-food essentials.
Realism. Don't call it optimism. It's realism.
Non-food essentials like rent, healthcare, education, and transport that you've talked about are still very much under pressure as of today. What does that tell us about structural problems in our economy that inflation data alone cannot fix?
Don't go there. Right now, Nigeria's inflation data offers us clarity about what's driving it. We've seen 18 consecutive months of acceleration, followed now by 12 months of deceleration except March. There's no structural thing anywhere. It's the exchange rate. It's passed through from exchange rate to inflation. It's not rebasing. Those who are saying that it's rebasing that accounts for the deceleration should then be ready to argue that it's rebasing that accounts for the strengthening and the appreciation of the exchange rate. As long as the naira was weak, volatile, and depreciating, inflation was accelerating. And it peaked in November last year. Both peaked the same November last year. Both started easing in December last year. And both have been improving steadily in 12 months. To remove any doubt, this is not about security. This is not about structure. Anybody that is saying a structural factor has to come and explain to me how structural factor will explain 12 months of deceleration.
Dr.
There's no
Teriba,
social factor that we, yes?
your projection is such that inflation could fall to about 12% this month, right? And hit
Yes.
single digits by January next
January.
year. What
That's right.
specific conditions must not go wrong? Exchange rate, fuel pricing, insecurity, fiscal discipline, for these
Hang on. Don't
forecasts to
multiply
hold.
the variables. Don't multiply the variables. Already you heard from the president of the Dangote groups. I said in the paper that I published last Friday that about this time of the year, you will begin to see retailers cutting prices. And he has come up to tell you that, the pump price of petroleum products, of PMS, is going to go down to 740 starting from today. And other retailers will follow. You'll be seeing clearance sale, discount, year-end discount. And much of it will be fueled by the fact that this is December and the exchange rate remains strong. And it will only get stronger because the influx of dollars, that dirty December represents, was what led to, the appreciation of the Naira in December last year and the January and all through the year. And it was what led to the deceleration, that these price cuts that you tend to ignore. And everybody has overstocked in anticipation of demand for dirty December that culminates in Christmas. When the retail outlets who had overstocked get disappointed, they start doing price cuts. So in December last year, the price level declined. In January, the price level declined. And those two are going to repeat this December. You see that the CPI, the index that is now at about 130, will drop. And it will drop further in January. That's why the MBS shouldn't tell anybody that it grew month on month by 10% last January. It did not. It fell by 5% last January for this same lagged effect of dirty December. That's the point. So nobody should, the deceleration of prices is real and it's linked to the acceleration, the appreciation of the currency. This time last year, it was 1,750. Today is 1,450. That's 300 Naira gain per dollar. Nobody wants to hold dollar at the moment. Go and check. People are converting their DOM accounts into Naira accounts. And that's going to, with dirty December is dollar supply. Pure and simple. It's just like, you have birds storming your farm, they will eat, but as they fly off, they drop the fruits and grow more trees around you. So it's positive. All they have, the benefit, the economic benefit for Nigeria is that the ease forex supply.
All
and
right.
if that lifts the exchange rate, it will ease the CPI and it will ease inflation. And much of it will persist into next year.
I hear you. We're due for a break now, but there are still variables that we are not touching on. I understand the magnanimity of Dangote to reduce oil price, but there's also there's a challenge between Dangote and Nigerian oil regulator that the National Assembly is also concerned about. We'll talk more about that after this break. Stay with us, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ayo Teriba is CEO of Economic Associates, and he believes strongly that inflation could fall around 12% by December this year and even slip into single digits by January 2026. Well, I'm optimistic as well. He says it's not just optimism, that it's realism. Dr. Teriba, you've argued strongly that this slowdown is not just statistical rebasing. You've also insisted that the inflation deceleration started before the rebasing around December 2024. Explain to us in simple language why you believe this decline is real and not just a numbers exercise by the MBS.
Yeah, I've had people, suggest that the government targeted 15% inflation for end of December this year, and we're at 14.5. That I had somebody saying it, and I don't want to mention the name of the person if you didn't hear him yourself. That it means that the MBS had been called upon to rig it. It's unfortunate, that anybody will come on the TV and say things like that. The MBS is independent. Their numbers have integrity. In spite of my disagreement with them, the number, their numbers have integrity. And they could have announced the rebates in April. They could have announced it in September. It's not going to change anything that happened last December, last January. And it's not going to change anything that is going to happen this month or next month. The rebasing does not change the rate of inflation anywhere in the world. So, and it didn't change anything. It will amount to ignorance for anybody to be inputting the deceleration of inflation to rebasing. We can have more debate about that. It's down to the exchange rate. It's down to the exchange rate, and the link between the exchange rate and the inflation is clear. If the exchange rate were to weaken today, inflation will accelerate again. It's as simple as rebasing or no rebasing, unless you want to argue that it was the exchange rate that was rebased. And then you can claim that it was rigged. So is dollar supply becoming inadequate about December last year, remaining adequate in January, forcing retailers to cut prices, and some of them are still shut down, and more of them will shut down, more of them will cut prices. So Mr. Aliko Dangote is cutting retail prices because the exchange rate is favorable. The exchange rate allows him to do so. And other retailers will follow suit. Not just in fuel prices, but in groceries. Anybody who wants to buy stuff for Christmas, we are like 8 days from Christmas now. Just wait for 5 more days, and you find that the prices will be lower than today. As suppliers will begin to compete with themselves to sell. And after Christmas, the stock that they have not sold that remain with them in January, we all get steeper discounts. And it will affect even rent ultimately. It will affect house prices ultimately. And that's dirty December.
This dirty December effect has generated a lot of debates. You say the heavy inflow of dollars and post-festive price corrections helped crash inflation early this year. Could do so again in January next year. But how exactly does...
It could do so this month.
This month.
It's doing so.
How does Christmas spending end up reducing inflation months later?
Not Christmas spending. Right now, you check the foreign exchange market, I do not think there's anybody who's looking for dollar to buy. Because you can't be trying to stock up for December now. Everybody who wanted to stock up for December had done so the last 3 months, last 2 months. So no demand for Forex now. People are arriving in the name of dirty December with dollars in their hand. So you have a glut of dollar supply. People only want to sell dollars now. And that lifts the exchange rate. A stronger exchange rate is lower consumer price index. And it's price cuts. Retailers will have to sell all the things they bought for less than they had anticipated to sell them. So it's not only Dangote that's going to do a price cut. Almost anybody who has anything to sell will do a price cut in December, will do a steeper price cut in January. That's the point I'm making. You are not, you have an economy in which the purchasing power of the people at its historical weakest. Is this 70,000 naira minimum wage that people want to use to create demand in Christmas? Or is it the 140 million that had been pushed into poverty that we, exact demand pressure? If the president does not give the transport rebate, travel rebate that he gives, nobody will do, many people will not be able to travel. They can't afford it. So they need, the courts, governments are going to come in now announcing that, bus transit and rail transit are free. It's all going to lead to a fall in, you say inflation is not a fall in price level, But in December, we got, a decline in the index. And in January, we got a decline in the index. I'm saying those two effects will repeat now as we speak, not in future, to push the headline inflation into single digits. And the core inflation can only follow.
It sounds
Will
like
eventually follow.
it sounds like you're saying not many Nigerians can actually oblate this December, if you understand what that means. But let's talk about food for a minute, Dr. Teriba. Because that's the real pressure point. Food inflation is now 11.08% year on year, down from nearly 40% last year. Yet month-on-month food prices rose again in November. Should Nigerians expect actual food prices to fall or just slower increases going forward?
Okay, you have spoken to the fact that this time last year, it was increasing by about 40%. And today, it's down to 11%. Never mind the slight acceleration in November. November is peak of demand from the explanation that we have given ourselves. That's the last month you have to stock up for Christmas. So demand peaks. That was when the Naira value was worst a year ago. That was when we got to peak inflation. 34.6% inflation was peak in 15 years. So let it not surprise anybody that month-on-month food price still accelerated in November. It's not stopping the fact that we've seen deceleration from a peak of 40 to 11, and that in December, there's not going to be any acceleration in the food price in spite of Christmas. You will see deceleration. In January, you will see deceleration, especially in food prices, because it's going to lead, the decline. It's almost in the single digits itself now, while the headline is still in 14.45. So just wait. I mean, 2 months will soon be here. They're saying February 15, when we see the January figure, food inflation will be in single digits. And the headline inflation will be in single digits. And you will see decline in price level, not just deceleration of inflation. The CPI will end up in January less than it was in October. And it won't be because of the basing.
We have just about 2 minutes to go. I'd like us to bring this home to household and businesses. At what point does falling inflation translate into actual lower interest rates, cheaper loans, job creation, and business expansion, so to speak? Or do you think we are still distance away from that relief?
Don't decouple inflation from the exchange rate. Every Nigerian at some point around September, October last year, exchange exchange 1,900 for $1. Today, every Nigerian exchanges 1,450 for $1. That's 450 gain per dollar for everybody in Nigeria. And that's what's driving the deceleration of inflation. So why are you saying what will they gain? We all benefit from that. It was choking this time last year. It has eased. The president said the economy has turned the corner, that relief is beginning to come. That count the relief from 1,900 per dollar to 1,450 per dollar is big relief. If that kind of relief repeats between now and next year, you're talking maybe 1,000 naira per dollar. And you can imagine that inflation, all measures of inflation will remain in single digits throughout next year. And if inflation remains in single digits, interest rates will go to single digits. You won't have to appeal to CBN before the two will cut rates to single digits. That's the point.
And it's a good place to leave it. Your optimism is almost infectious. Hopefully we'll have this conversation.
Realism.
Your realism is almost infectious. Hopefully we'll have this conversation in January, and I'm hoping that the headline will be that inflation rate is now single digit.
2 months will soon be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Ayo Teriba, CEO, Economic Associates, thank you so much for talking to us on the program today.
Thank you.
That's our show today. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi.